Captain Veltar pressed her four-fingered hand against the cool metal wall of her ship's bridge. The Zephyrian exploration vessel Meridian's Edge hummed quietly as it moved through the asteroid field of the Kepler 442 system. Her crew of 12 different alien species worked at their stations scanning rocks and debris for anything valuable or interesting. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on the deep scanners," called out Crix, the ship's sensor officer. His insect-like eyes glowed as he studied the readings. "There's a large object hiding behind that cluster of asteroids. It's big, maybe 10 times our size." Veltar's purple skin shifted to a darker shade, which meant she was curious. Her people had been exploring space for thousands of years, and she had seen many strange things. "What kind of object? Another asteroid?" "No, Captain, it has straight edges and metal surfaces. It's definitely artificial, but I can't match it to any known ship designs in our database." Crix's mandibles clicked nervously. "The radiation levels suggest it's been out here for a very long time." The bridge fell quiet except for the soft beeping of instruments. Veltar looked at her crew. There was Jorak, a tall gray being with large black eyes who served as her science officer. Next to him sat Thena, a scaled reptilian who handled communications. The others came from different worlds across the galaxy, all united in their love of discovery. "How long do you think it's been drifting?" Veltar asked. Jorak studied his instruments carefully. "The damage patterns and cosmic radiation exposure suggest, Captain, this could be tens of thousands of years old, maybe more." A shiver ran through the crew. Finding ancient ships was rare and often dangerous. Most old vessels had been picked clean by scavengers long ago, or they contained things better, left alone. "Take us closer," Veltar decided. "But keep our shields up and weapons ready." The Meridian's Edge moved carefully through the asteroid field. As they got closer, the mysterious object became clearer on their screens. It was indeed a ship, but unlike anything they had ever seen. The hull was dark and scarred, covered in impacts from countless pieces of space debris. Strange symbols were carved into its sides, worn almost smooth by time. "By the 7 moons," whispered Thena. "Look at the size of that thing." The alien ship was massive. It stretched nearly 2 kilometers from nose to tail, with thick armor plating and what looked like weapon ports along its sides. But something was wrong with its design. The proportions seemed strange, and the living spaces appeared to be built for creatures different from any known species. "I'm not finding this design in any of our records," Jorak reported. "The construction methods are unknown. The materials are some kind of advanced metal alloy we've never seen before." "What about life signs?" Veltar asked. "None that I can detect. The ship appears to be dead, but there might be some power still running deep inside. I'm picking up very faint energy readings." Veltar made her decision. "We're going aboard. Jorak, Crix, Thena, and Morok, you're with me. The rest of you stay here and monitor our signals. If anything goes wrong, get us out of here immediately." The boarding party suited up in their environmental gear. The airlocks connected with a loud clang that echoed through both ships. As they stepped into the ancient vessel, their helmet lights cut through the darkness. The corridors were huge, clearly built for beings much larger than any of them. Strange symbols covered the walls, along with what looked like battle damage. Scorch marks and deep gouges suggested this ship had seen serious fighting. "The gravity is still working," Morok observed. The 4-armed engineer checked his instruments. "Artificial gravity systems are still running on emergency power. This ship was built to last." They moved deeper into the vessel, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The ship felt like a tomb, silent and cold. But as they explored, they found things that made them more and more curious. The weapons they discovered were far beyond anything in current galactic technology. Energy cannons that could punch through a planet's crust, armor systems that could absorb and redirect almost any attack, shield generators that seemed to bend space itself. "Who could have built this?" Thena asked in amazement. In what appeared to be the ship's bridge, they found their first clue. A symbol was etched into the captain's chair, still visible despite the damage. Jorak ran it through his translation systems. It's an ancient language, but I can make out some of it. The ship's name appears to be Indomitable. And this symbol, here might be letters, U-S. UES Indomitable. Veltar read slowly. I've never heard of the UES before. What could that stand for? They continued exploring, finding more mysteries. The ship's crew quarters were built for bipedal beings about 2 meters tall. The food preparation areas contained traces of organic compounds unlike anything in known biology. Most strangely, they found what appeared to be memorials, walls covered in millions of names in the same unknown language. It was Crix who made the most important discovery. Deep in the ship's computer core, he found a data storage system that was still partially active. Captain, I think I can access some of these files. The system is badly damaged, but there might be enough power to recover some information. Do it carefully, Veltar warned. We don't know what security systems this ship might have. As Crix worked, ancient holographic displays flickered to life around them. Images appeared and disappeared, star maps showing regions of space they had never seen, battle formations involving hundreds of ships, and faces of the beings who had crewed this vessel. The faces made them all step back in shock. The beings were strange but somehow familiar. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces, with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Their skin was pale or dark in various shades, and hair grew from the tops of their heads. These creatures, they look almost like the ancient legends, Jorak whispered. The old stories some species tell about the builders who came before. Humans, Crix said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. The database has a species designation. These beings called themselves humans. Veltar felt her blood turn cold. Every spacefaring species knew the stories of humans. They were legends, myths told to children, the ancient race that had supposedly existed long ago before vanishing into history. Most scholars believed they were just stories. But humans are extinct, Thena protested. They died out over 100,000 years ago. Everyone knows that. Maybe they didn't die out, Crix said quietly, still working at the computer. Maybe they left. Captain, I'm finding battle logs here, thousands of them. This ship wasn't just traveling through space, it was fighting something. Fighting what? I don't know. The files are damaged. But Captain, these battle logs span thousands of years. This ship was in active combat for a very long time. As if responding to their conversation, the ancient computers suddenly hummed to life with more power. A holographic image appeared in the center of the bridge, the figure of a human in some kind of military uniform. The hologram looked at them with tired eyes and spoke in a language none of them understood. But the ship's translation system slowly began working, and words began to form that they could understand. If you are receiving this message, then you have found one of our ships. We are the last of our kind, and our war is nearly over. What we fought to protect, we pray still survives. What we became to save you, we hope you never have to become yourselves. The message flickered and died, leaving them in stunned silence. Veltar looked around at her crew, seeing her own confusion reflected in their faces. They had come here looking for salvage or scientific curiosities. Instead, they had found evidence that everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. Get everything you can from that computer, she ordered. We're taking this information back to the Galactic Council. They need to know what we've found. As her crew worked to download what they could from the ancient database, Veltar stared at the empty captain's chair of the Indomitable. Somewhere out in the dark spaces between the stars, the last humans might still be fighting their mysterious war, and if they were, the galaxy might owe them a debt it could never repay. For 3 days, the crew of the Meridian's Edge worked to recover data from the ancient human ship. The computers were old and damaged, but slowly they began to piece together fragments of information. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. Jorak hadn't slept in 30 hours. His large black eyes were red from staring at screens full of data. Captain, you need to see this, he called out, his voice shaking with excitement and fear. Veltar hurried over to his station. Around them, the rest of the crew worked quietly, but everyone was listening. What did you find? I've been able to translate more of their battle logs. Captain, these humans weren't just fighting random pirates or hostile aliens. They were fighting something else entirely. Something they called the Devourers. Devourers? I've never heard of any species by that name. Jorak pulled up a holographic display. Ancient human writing scrolled past with their translation appearing below it. According to these records, the Devourers aren't from our dimension. They come from somewhere else entirely. And Captain, they don't just conquer planets. They consume them completely. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of computers. Crix looked up from his own station. I found something too. Star charts showing entire systems that just disappeared. Hundreds of them. And the dates match the human battle logs. Veltar studied the charts. They showed areas of space that were now empty, regions that every species avoided because there was nothing there. No stars, no planets, no life. Just empty void. The dead zones, she whispered. Every space pilot knew about them. Large areas of space where nothing existed, not even cosmic dust. Scientists had always assumed they were natural phenomena, places where matter had never formed properly. Not natural at all, Thena said, reading over more translated files. According to this, the Devourers consume everything. Matter, energy, even space itself. They leave nothing behind but emptiness. Morok's forearms worked frantically at his engineering station. I'm finding technical specifications for human weapons. Captain, these designs are incredible. They built guns that could crack moons in half, ships that could survive inside black holes, and armor that could protect against weapons that bend reality itself. Why would they need such powerful weapons? Veltar asked, though she was beginning to fear the answer. Because their enemy could do things that shouldn't be possible, Jorak replied. Look at this battle report. A new hologram appeared, showing a human fleet attacking something that hurt to look at. The enemy ships seemed to shift and change shape constantly, as if they couldn't decide what they wanted to be. When they fired their weapons, space itself seemed to tear and bleed. The Devourers use weapons that attack reality, Jorak explained. They can make matter simply stop existing. They can turn time backwards in small areas. They can make gravity flow uphill. The humans had to develop completely new kinds of technology just to fight them. Veltar felt sick. Her people had been space travelers for thousands of years, but they had never encountered anything like this. How long were the humans fighting this war? According to the logs, it started about 100,000 years ago. The Devourers appeared at the edge of the galaxy and began consuming everything in their path. But Captain, here's the important part. The humans didn't run away. More files appeared on the screens around them. They showed human evacuation fleets but not fleeing from danger. Instead, they were moving other species to safety. They evacuated everyone, Crix said in amazement. Every intelligent species they could find. They moved them away from the Devourer advance and told them to build new civilizations in safe areas. That's why there are so many empty systems between the galactic rim and the inhabited core, Thena realized. The humans cleared everyone out and told them to stay away. But why? Veltar asked. Why take on such a terrible burden alone? The answer came from a personal log they recovered, recorded by a human captain whose name translated as Marcus Chen. His image appeared on the screen, a tired-looking human with gray hair and scars on his face. Day 12,147 of the war, he said. We could have asked for help. The Zephyrians have good ships. The Korthak are brave fighters. But we've seen what the Devourers do to entire species. They don't just kill bodies. They unmake souls. They erase you from ever having existed at all. The human captain paused, looking directly at the camera. We made a choice. Better that one species becomes monsters to fight monsters than to let the entire galaxy burn. We'll hold the line. We'll become whatever we need to become. And hopefully, the others will never have to know what we sacrificed to keep them safe. The message ended, leaving the alien crew in stunned silence. There are thousands of these logs, Jorak said quietly, spanning tens of thousands of years, generation after generation of humans fighting this war. Veltar studied the data scrolling past, Battle reports, casualty lists, technological developments, desperate last stands. The scope of it was overwhelming. "Show me the most recent files," she ordered. What they found was even more disturbing. The humans had changed over the course of their long war. Early logs showed normal-looking humans in regular military uniforms. But as time passed, the images became stranger. They modified themselves, Morok observed. "Look at these later records. They made themselves bigger, stronger, faster. They added mechanical parts to their bodies. They changed their biology to better fight the devourers. The final human images they found barely looked like the same species. These warriors were massive, their bodies more machine than flesh. Their eyes glowed with artificial light, and their limbs had been replaced with weapons and tools of war." "What did they become?" Thena whispered. "Whatever they had to become," Veltar replied. She understood now. The humans had sacrificed not just their lives, but their humanity itself, to protect species they barely knew. Crix found another disturbing piece of information. "Captain, the battle logs show the war was getting worse. The devourers were learning, adapting, and the human forces were getting smaller." "Smaller how?" "Fewer ships, fewer personnel. They were losing the war of attrition. This ship, the Indomitable, was part of a retreat from something called Bastion Prime." "What was Bastion Prime?" "Near as I can tell, it was their last major stronghold. And according to these logs, it fell about 50,000 years ago. The implications hit all of them at once. If the humans had been retreating 50,000 years ago, and if their numbers had been declining, then the war might already be over." "Are they all dead?" Veltar asked. "I don't know," Crix admitted. "But Captain, there's something else, something that scares me." "What?" "Some of these battle logs mention Devourer scout ships. Not just at the galactic rim, but closer to inhabited space. Much closer." Veltar felt her blood turn cold. "How close?" "Some of the logs mention systems that are only a few hundred light years from the galactic core. From us." The bridge erupted in worried conversation. If the Devourers were that close to inhabited space, if the humans were no longer holding the line, then every species in the galaxy was in terrible danger. "We need to get this information to the Galactic Council immediately," Veltar decided. "Every species needs to know what's coming." But as they prepared to leave, Thena made one more discovery. "Captain, I'm reading a faint life sign. Very faint, coming from deep inside the human ship." Everyone stopped what they were doing. "Life sign? What kind?" "Humanoid. In some kind of medical facility. It's very weak, but it's definitely alive." Veltar looked at her crew, seeing her own mixture of hope and fear reflected in their faces. If there was still a human alive on this ship, they might have found the key to understanding everything. "Take us there," she ordered. Carefully. As they made their way deeper into the ancient human vessel, none of them could shake the feeling that they were about to meet someone who had seen horrors beyond imagination, someone who had fought the galaxy's nightmares so that others could sleep peacefully, someone who might be the last of their kind. The corridors seemed longer and darker as they approached the medical bay, as if the ship itself knew that they were about to witness the final chapter of humanity's sacrifice. The medical bay of the Indomitable was a maze of damaged equipment and broken machines. Veltar and her crew moved carefully through the debris, following the faint life sign deeper into the ship's medical section. Emergency lighting flickered, weakly, casting strange shadows on the walls. "The signal is getting stronger," Thena reported, checking her scanner. "Whatever it is, it's behind those sealed doors." The doors were massive, designed to withstand serious damage. Morok worked for several minutes to get them open, his forearms operating different tools at once. When they finally slid apart with a grinding sound, cold mist poured out. "Cryogenic storage," Crix observed. "The temperature in there is far below freezing." They entered a large chamber filled with dozens of cylindrical pods. Most were dark and empty, but one still glowed with a faint blue light. As they approached it, they could see a figure inside, suspended in some kind of preservation fluid. "By all the stars," Jorak whispered. It's a human. Through the transparent aluminum of the pod, they could see a human female. She appeared to be middle-aged, with short, dark hair and several scars on her face and arms. Her body showed signs of mechanical enhancement. Her left arm was partly artificial and there were metal ports in her skull. Is she alive? Veltar asked. Thena ran her medical scanner over the pod. Yes, but barely. Life support is failing. The pod has been running for tens of thousands of years on backup power, maybe longer. Can we wake her up? I don't know. Human. Biology is different from anything we've studied. But Captain, if we don't do something soon, she'll die anyway. Veltar made her decision. Do it. Wake her up. Morak connected his equipment to the pod's systems while Thena prepared medical supplies. Slowly, the pod began to drain and warm up. Warning lights flashed as ancient systems came to life. The human's eyes opened suddenly, wide with panic. She tried to sit up, gasping and choking on the preservation fluid in her lungs. Thena quickly moved to help her, but the human's reaction was pure warrior instinct. The human woman rolled out of the pod and grabbed what looked like a metal tool, holding it like a weapon. She backed against the wall, her artificial eye glowing, red as it scanned them. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse and strained. Unknown contacts. Identify yourselves. Are you devourer constructs? No, Veltar said quickly, raising her hands peacefully. We're explorers. We found your ship drifting in space. We're not your enemy. The human studied them for a long moment. Her artificial eye continued scanning them, probably analyzing their biology and threat level. Slowly, she lowered her improvised weapon. Explorers? She asked. From which fleet? I don't recognize your species configuration. We're from the Galactic Council, Veltar explained. I'm Captain Veltar of the exploration vessel Meridian's Edge. We found your ship by accident while surveying this system. The humans stared at them in confusion. Galactic Council? I've never heard of any Galactic Council. What's the current stardate? When Jorak told her, the human went very still. She sat down heavily on a medical bench, her face pale. 50,000 years, she whispered. I've been asleep for 50,000 years. What's your name? Veltar asked gently. Commander Sarah Chen, United Earth Space Navy, serial number 7749 Delta. I was the executive officer of this vessel. She looked around the damaged medical bay. What happened to my ship? Where is the rest of my crew? The alien crew exchanged glances. They had found thousands of names on the ship's memorial walls, but no other bodies. We think you're the only survivor, Thena said carefully. Your ship was badly damaged. It's been drifting in space for a very long time. Commander Chen closed her eyes and was quiet for several minutes. When she opened them again, there was deep sadness there, but also a kind of strength that impressed them all. The last of the indomitable, she said. My crew would have set the ship on automatic course and put me in deep freeze when they knew they were dying. Standard procedure when there's no hope of rescue. Commander Chen, Veltar said, we need to understand what happened. We found your battle logs, records of a war against something called the Devourers, but we've never heard of them. The galaxy knows nothing about this war. Chen looked at them with surprise. You don't know about the Devourers? Then we succeeded. You're all still alive, still free. We held the line long enough. Held. The line against what? Chen stood up, though she was still weak from her long sleep. Let me show you something. She led them to a wall display and activated it with her artificial hand. Images appeared showing the galaxy as the humans had known it. 100,000 years ago, my people were young explorers just like you. We had faster-than-light travel, but we were still learning about the universe. Then we found something at the galaxy's edge, a tear in space itself. The display showed what looked like a wound in reality, dark and twisted. The Devourers came through that tear. They weren't from our dimension, our universe. They were something else entirely, and they were hungry. New images appeared showing the creatures Veltar and her crew had glimpsed in the battle logs. Things that seemed to shift between different shapes, as if they couldn't decide what form to take. They consume everything. Chen continued. Not just matter and energy, but the very concepts of existence. When they devour a planet, it doesn't just die. It's erased from having ever existed at all. The stars forget it was there. That's impossible, Crix protested. Is it? You've seen the dead zones, haven't you? All those empty regions of space, where nothing exists? Those used to be star systems full of life. The alien crew fell silent. They had indeed seen those regions, but they had always assumed they were natural. When we first encountered the Devourers, we tried to get help from other species. But we quickly realized that conventional weapons couldn't hurt them. Conventional thinking couldn't even understand them. We needed to become something new. Chen touched her artificial arm. We modified ourselves, enhanced our bodies, our minds, our technology. We turned ourselves into living weapons specifically designed to fight an enemy that shouldn't exist. But why? Veltar asked. Why take on such a burden alone? Chen looked at them with eyes that had seen too much war. Because someone had to, and because we discovered something terrible about the Devourers. They don't just consume matter. They consume souls, memories, entire histories. If they had reached the inhabited galaxy, every species would have been erased not just from existence, but from ever having existed. So you evacuated everyone. We moved every species we could find to safe areas and told them to stay there. We took on the job of holding the galactic rim. Generation after generation of humans dedicated their lives to the war. Thena asked the question they were all thinking. Are we still in danger? Chen's expression grew dark. I don't know. When I went into cryosleep, we had just lost Bastion Prime, our last major stronghold. The fleet was scattered, running individual missions with no central command. We were losing the war. So the Devourers might still be out there? If any humans are still fighting, then the Devourers are contained. If not. Chen didn't finish the sentence, but they all understood. What were you like? Jorak asked suddenly. Before the war, I mean. What were humans like when they weren't soldiers? Chen smiled sadly. We were explorers like you. Artists, scientists, dreamers. We loved music and poetry and stories. We had families, children who played in gardens under alien suns. We laughed easily and cried at sad movies. What happened to all of that? We locked it away, buried it deep inside ourselves so we could become what the galaxy needed us to become. We sacrificed our humanity to preserve humanity itself. She gestured at her mechanical enhancements. This is what we became. Living weapons that could think and feel just enough to be effective, but not enough to break under the weight of what we had to do. Do you regret it? Veltar asked. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Ask me that when I know whether your people are still free. If the galaxy is still alive, still growing, still creating beautiful things, then no, I don't regret it. She looked around at the alien crew. You're the proof that our sacrifice meant something. Different species, working together, exploring the universe in peace. That's what we fought to preserve. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Chen's artificial eye began glowing brighter. What is that? Veltar demanded. Chen's face went pale. Devourer proximity alert. They're here. Before anyone could ask what she meant, Crix's voice came over their communicators from the Meridian's edge. Captain, you need to get back here. Immediately. We're detecting multiple contacts approaching the system. They're not showing up as any known ship types. Chen grabbed Veltar's arm with her artificial hand. The war isn't over. It's coming to you. The journey back to Galactic Council space took 12 days. During that time, Commander Chen worked with Veltar's crew to prepare for what was coming. The ancient human ship's weapon systems were too damaged to repair, but Chen was able to download critical information about fighting the Devourers. Your shields won't work, she explained to Morok as he studied human defensive technology. Devourers don't use energy weapons like we understand them. They attack the idea of your ship existing. You need reality anchors, quantum stabilizers, existence locks. I don't understand any of those terms, Morok admitted. That's the problem. Your people develop technology for a rational universe. The Devourers come from somewhere else where the rules are different. When they finally reached the Galactic Council station, Chen insisted on coming with them to the emergency session Veltar had requested. She walked through the corridors of the massive space station, staring in wonder at the dozens of different species living and working together. "This is what we dreamed of," she said quietly. "All these different people, building something together in peace." The council chamber was a vast circular room with representatives from over 100 species. When Veltar presented their evidence, the reaction was immediate and chaotic. "Impossible," shouted Korax, the reptilian ambassador. "Ancient human legends are just stories. Everyone knows they never really existed." "Then explain this," Veltar replied, activating the holographic displays. Images from the Indomitable filled the chamber. Battle logs, star charts, technical specifications, and finally, Commander Chen herself. The chamber fell silent as Chen stood and faced the assembled aliens. Many had never seen a human before, even in pictures. "My name is Sarah Chen," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I am a soldier of the United Earth Space Navy. For 100,000 years, my people have fought to keep you safe from an enemy you never knew existed." "Prove it," demanded Ambassador Zarath of the Silicon Collective. "Show us these devourers you claim to have fought." Chen nodded to Veltar, who activated the recordings they had recovered. The chamber watched in horror as the battle footage played. Human ships fighting against enemies that hurt to look at. Weapons that tore holes in space itself. Entire star systems winking out of existence. "The dead zones," whispered Dr. Yilan from the scientific consortium. "Those empty regions we thought were natural phenomena." "Battlefields," Chen confirmed. "Places where we held the line. Places where entire worlds died so that yours could live." Ambassador Thek of the Peaceful Union stood up angrily. "Even if this is true, why should we believe you? Your people could have asked for help. Instead, you chose to fight alone, and then claim credit for protecting us." Chen's artificial eye glowed as she stared at the ambassador. "You want to know why we didn't ask for help? Because we tried that with the first species we encountered after the war began. The hegemony of Kess, beautiful people, advanced technology, strong military." A new hologram appeared showing a species none of them recognized. Tall, graceful beings with silver skin and multiple arms. "We warned them about the devourers, asked them to help us fight. They agreed. They sent their entire battle fleet to join us in holding the line." The image changed, showing a massive space battle. Hundreds of ships fought against the reality-bending horrors of the devourers. The Kess fought bravely. They died bravely. But when the devourers consumed them, they didn't just die. They were erased from ever having existed. Their home worlds forgot they had ever been born. Their families forgot they had ever lived. The Kess were wiped out not just physically but conceptually. The chamber was deathly quiet now. "That's why we fought alone," Chen continued. "Because we couldn't bear to watch another species be erased from existence. Better that we become monsters than let you all be unmade." "What do you mean, become monsters?" asked Dr. Yilan. Chen pulled back her sleeve, revealing more of her artificial arm. "This is what I looked like when I was young and the war was new." A hologram appeared showing a normal human woman. "This is what I became." She gestured to herself. Scarred, enhanced, more machine than flesh. "We modified ourselves over thousands of years, enhanced our bodies, our minds, our souls. We turned ourselves into living weapons that could fight enemies from outside reality. We gave up art, music, literature, love. We gave up everything that made us human, except for the core, drive to protect others." The silence stretched on for several minutes. Finally, the council's prime speaker stood up. "Even if we accept this story," she said slowly, "what does it mean for us now? You said the war was lost 50,000 years ago. I said we lost Bastion, Prime. But human forces might still be fighting scattered actions across the galactic rim, and the Devourers are patient. They would have spent the last 50,000 years building their strength for a final push into inhabited space." As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the station. A communication officer ran into the chamber. "Prime, Speaker, we're receiving emergency signals from the outer colonies. 3 systems have gone completely dark. No communication, no energy signatures. They've just vanished. Chen closed her eyes. It's starting. Over the next few days, the reports got worse. More systems disappeared, leaving empty void behind. Galactic defense fleets sent to investigate found nothing. No wreckage, no debris, no trace that anything had ever existed there. The Council erupted into arguments. Some species wanted to flee to the galactic core. Others demanded immediate military action. A few suggested surrendering before the Devourers reached their home worlds. Chen attended every session, trying to explain what they were facing. Your weapons won't work, she told the military commanders. Your shields are useless. Your tactics are based on fighting rational enemies who follow the laws of physics. Then what do you suggest? Demanded General Korvac of the warrior caste. Learn from us. Let me teach you how to build weapons that can hurt them. Let me show you how to modify your ships and your people to survive in a reality war. Modify our people? The general looked horrified. The Devourers don't just attack your bodies. They attack the concept of your existence. You need to anchor yourselves to reality in ways that biological evolution never prepared you for. Many species rejected her suggestions. The peaceful races were horrified by the idea of modifying themselves into weapons. The proud warrior races refused to learn from an extinct species. The scientific communities demanded more data before making any decisions. But some listened. Captain Veltar convinced several exploration fleets to let Chen install basic reality anchors on their ships. A few military units agreed to experimental modifications. The Galactic Emergency Response Force began training with tactics Chen developed. Over millennia of fighting, it wasn't enough. The Devourer advance accelerated. Entire sectors went dark. Refugee fleets fled toward the galactic core, carrying billions of displaced beings. We're not ready, Chen told Veltar privately. Your people aren't prepared for this kind of war. They still think like peaceful explorers and rational soldiers. Then teach us faster. I'm trying. But it took humanity 1,000 years to learn how to fight these things effectively. You have maybe a few months. The breaking point came when the Devourers reached the Korthak Empire, one of the galaxy's major military powers. The Korthak had been confident they could stop any enemy with their massive fleets and powerful weapons. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Korthak Empire had never existed. Billions of beings erased from reality. Ancient cultures, deleted from history. Homeworlds that became empty void. The surviving species finally understood what they were facing. What do we do? The Prime Speaker asked Chen. How do we fight something that can unmake us from existence itself? Chen looked around the chamber at the desperate faces of 100 species. We do what my people did. We become something new, something that can survive in an irrational universe. And if we refuse? Chen's expression was grim. Then in a few months, none of you will ever have existed, and the universe itself might forget that life was ever possible. The vote was close, but it passed. The Galactic Council authorized emergency modifications to their fleets, their soldiers, and themselves. They would learn to fight reality itself. Chen began the terrible work of teaching an entire galaxy how to become monsters in order to remain alive. But even as she worked, she watched the star charts showing the Devourer advance. Time was running out. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, the last of her people might still be fighting their final battle. 3 months after the Galactic Council's decision to fight, the Devourers reached the core systems. The modified fleet that met them was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Ships that had once been designed for exploration and peaceful contact now bristled with weapons that could wound reality itself. Crews that had been scientists and diplomats wore armor that anchored them to existence. Soldiers who had trained for conventional warfare now carried guns that fired concepts instead of energy. Commander Chen stood on the bridge of the hastily modified battleship Galaxy's Hope, watching the fleet form up around them. Representatives from dozens of species worked side by side, their bodies altered by the same kinds of modifications that had transformed humanity millennia ago. Fleet reports ready, Commander, announced Captain Veltar, now serving as Chen's second in command. Her purple skin had taken on a metallic sheen from the reality anchors implanted under it. "I still can't believe you made me the fleet commander," Chen said. "I'm from an extinct species. Half of these people have never even heard of humans." "You're the only one who knows how to fight them," Veltar replied. "And besides, after 3 months of working together, I think we've all learned to trust you." The enemy appeared on their sensors like a wound in space itself. The Devourer fleet didn't follow normal physics. Their ships seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, constantly shifting between different possible states of being. "All ships, this is Commander Chen," she broadcast to the fleet. "Remember your training. Don't trust what your eyes tell you. Don't trust what your instruments tell you. Trust only your reality anchors and your modified instincts." The battle began unlike any conflict in galactic history. The Devourers attacked not with energy weapons or missiles, but with assaults on the concept of their enemy's existence. Ships began to flicker in and out of reality. Crew members started forgetting their own names as the Devourers tried to erase them from having ever been born. But the modifications held. The reality anchors kept the galactic fleet grounded in existence. The enhanced crew members fought back, with weapons that could hurt beings from outside normal spacetime. "It's working," Veltar reported excitedly. "The modifications are working. We're actually hurting them." Chen allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe the galaxy species could learn to fight this war. Maybe they wouldn't need humanity's help after all. Then the real Devourer fleet arrived. The advance force they had been fighting was revealed as merely a scouting party. The main fleet that emerged from the void dwarfed anything Chen had ever seen. Thousands of reality-warping ships, each one capable of unmaking entire star systems. "Dear gods," whispered Dr. Yilan from her science station. "There are so many of them." The galactic fleet fired everything they had. Reality-piercing torpedoes, existence-locked energy beams, quantum-stabilized missiles. They managed to destroy several Devourer ships, but for every one they killed, 10 more took its place. "We're not going to make it," General Korvac reported grimly. "We're being overwhelmed." Chen watched her newly trained fleet begin to fall, apart under the sheer weight of the Devourer assault. Ships were being erased from reality despite their modifications. Entire squadrons simply stopped existing. "All ships fall back to the inner defense line," she ordered. "Protect the core worlds as long as possible." As the fleet began its desperate retreat, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. At first, Chen thought it was another Devourer, force coming to finish them off. Then she saw the ship signatures. "Impossible," she whispered. "What is it?" Veltar asked. "Human ships. Those are human ship signatures." The reinforcements that emerged from hyperspace were like nothing the Galactic Alliance had ever seen. These weren't the ancient vessels like the Indomitable. These were warships built for one purpose only: fighting the Devourers. The ships were massive, their hulls covered in weapons that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They moved through space in formations that shouldn't have been possible, attacking from directions that didn't exist. At the head of the fleet was a dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest galactic battleships. Its hull was scarred by countless battles, and its weapons could be felt affecting reality from millions of kilometers away. A communication signal came through, and Chen nearly cried when she heard it. "This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terras, Vengeance, commanding the last fleet of humanity. Sarah, is that you?" "Marcus." Chen could barely believe it. "Marcus, you're alive." "Barely. We've been fighting running battles for 50,000 years, but we're still here. Still fighting." On the main screen, an image appeared of Admiral Chen. Like his descendant Sarah, he was more machine than human now, but his eyes still held the determination that had kept humanity fighting for so long. "How many of you are left?" Sarah asked. "About 3,000 humans spread across 200 ships. We're the last of our species, Sarah, the final guardians." 3,000 humans. Out of the billions who had once lived among the stars, only 3,000 remained. But as Sarah watched their ships engage the Devourer fleet, She realized that those 3,000 were worth entire armies of normal soldiers. The human ships fought like living things, flowing around devourer attacks, striking from impossible angles using weapons and tactics developed over 100 millennia of warfare. They had become something beyond human, beyond alien, beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. All human ships protect the galactic fleet, Admiral Chen ordered. These people are what we've been fighting to preserve. The battle turned. With the humans leading the attack, the combined fleet began to push the devourers back. The ancient enemy found themselves facing opponents who understood their nature, who had weapons specifically designed to kill reality benders. But the cost was terrible. Human ships died one by one, their crews sacrificing themselves to save species they had never met. Each loss was irreplaceable. There were no more humans being born to replace the fallen. "We can't keep this up," Admiral Chen reported to his descendant. "We're winning, but we won't survive the victory." "Then don't fight alone," Sarah replied. "Let the other species help. Let them learn from you." "Sarah, they're not ready. They don't understand what this kind of war does to you. They're learning. And Marcus, look around you. Look at what they've already sacrificed to fight alongside us." Admiral Chen studied the galactic fleet. Species that had never known war were dying to protect their neighbors. Scientists had become soldiers. Peaceful explorers had become reality warriors. "They're becoming like us," he realized. "No," Sarah said firmly. "They're becoming better than us. They're learning to fight this war without losing their souls." The final phase of the battle began as the Devourer command ship emerged from the void. It was less a ship than a tear in reality itself, a wound through which the enemy's true nature could be seen. "That's their anchor point," Admiral Chen explained. "Destroy that, and we can seal the breach between dimensions. End this war forever." "What do you need?" Sarah asked. "Everything. Every ship, every weapon, every modification we've made. And probably our lives." The combined fleet formed up for the final assault, humans and aliens side by side, species that had learned to fight monsters while remaining people themselves. The attack was successful, but at a cost that Sarah knew would haunt the galaxy forever. The human fleet was destroyed almost to the last ship. Admiral Chen's final transmission came through as his ship dove directly into the Devourer command vessel. "Tell them we did it willingly," he said. "Tell them humanity chose this fate to give the galaxy a future." When the dimensional breach sealed and the last of the Devourers were destroyed, only 17 human ships remained. Less than 200 humans out of the billions who had once filled the galaxy with laughter and dreams. But the war was over. In the months that followed, Sarah Chen found herself in a position she had never expected, helping to rebuild not just the galaxy, but humanity itself. The surviving humans were welcomed into the galactic community as heroes, but more importantly as family. "We want to learn from you," Veltar told her as they stood on the observation deck of the new galactic defense station. "Not just how to fight, but how to be human, how to sacrifice without losing ourselves, how to love something enough to die for it." Sarah smiled, and for the first time in decades it was a completely human expression. "Then let me teach you about music," she said, "and poetry, and the way humans used to laugh at silly jokes." "Is that important for galactic defense?" Veltar asked, confused. "It's the most important thing of all," Sarah replied. "It's what we were fighting to preserve." Looking out at the stars, Sarah could see ships from 100 different species, working together to build something new, something that honored both the sacrifice of humanity and the dreams of all the species who had survived. The war was over, but the peace that followed was something worth fighting for. Somewhere in the void, the last human ship limped toward port, carrying in its holds the seeds of a new kind of civilization. One where different species could become family. One where the lessons of war could be used to build something better than what came before. One where humanity's sacrifice had finally, truly, been worth it. The Empire finally met humanity in battle. Now they understand the warnings. The massive Imperial flagship Eternal Dominance, hung in space like a dark metal mountain. Admiral Zexathal stood on the command deck, his forearms clasped behind his back as he stared at the blue-green planet on the main screen. Earth. Such an unimpressive name for what would soon be the newest addition to the galactic hegemony. "Admiral, all ships report ready for the diplomatic mission," said Sub-Commander Vex, his voice carrying the usual military precision expected in the Imperial fleet. Zexthal nodded, the scales on his neck shimmering under the ship's lights. 10,000 years of expansion, and it's always the same. These primitives will bend the knee as all others have before them. The hegemony had detected unusual radio signals from this sector 3 Imperial cycles ago. Scout ships confirmed what they already suspected: another young species taking its first steps into space. Humans. According to reports, they had only reached their own moon less than a century ago. They had small colonies on their red neighbor planet and were just beginning to mine their asteroid belt. The Imperial Council dismissed them as insignificant, as they had with countless species before. Earth had resources. The hegemony needed resources. The equation was simple. "Ambassador Vreen's shuttle is prepared for departure," Vex reported. "Good. Let's follow protocol. Offer them the standard terms and we'll be harvesting this system within a cycle," Zexthal said. The small diplomatic vessel broke away from the Imperial fleet, which remained hidden behind the gas giant the humans called Jupiter. Protocol dictated a show of peaceful intentions before the inevitable conquest. It was more efficient that way. Most species surrendered immediately when they saw the full might of the hegemony. On Earth, alarm bells rang through the United Defense Coalition headquarters. Their deep space monitoring stations had detected the alien fleet days ago, though the vessels remained partially concealed behind Jupiter. "They're sending a single ship," said Kelly Martinez, the lead communications specialist, as she studied the readouts on her screen. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and despite having been awake for nearly 20 hours, her eyes remained alert. Commander Liam Davis nodded, the weight of humanity's future heavy on his shoulders. At 45, he had spent his entire military career preparing for this moment, first contact with an alien civilization, but he had hoped for a more peaceful scenario. "Their positioning is tactical," he said. "They're hiding most of their ships. This isn't a friendly visit." UDC headquarters buzzed with activity as military leaders from around the world gathered in the crisis room. Screens displayed the approaching alien craft now passing Mars. "We've prepared the landing zone as requested in their transmission," said General Peter Gould. "Security teams are in place but displaying minimal weapons as they asked." The alien shuttle landed with precision in the designated area, a large empty field outside Geneva. The human delegation waited nervously as the ship's door opened with a hiss of escaping air. Ambassador Vreen emerged, a tall, slender alien with grayish-blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes. 2 attendants followed, carrying ornate cases that humans would later learn contained the terms of surrender. The meeting took place in a hastily prepared conference room. Kelly Martinez sat beside Commander Davis, struggling to operate the translation device the aliens had provided. Ambassador Vreen spoke in musical tones that the translator converted to flat, mechanical English. "The galactic hegemony welcomes Earth to the community of stars. We bring prosperity and order to all worlds under our protection." The words were pleasant, but the terms were not. As Vreen continued, the humans exchanged troubled glances. "In exchange for Imperial protection, Earth will provide a resource quota of 30% of all planetary mining operations, 25% of biological resources, and a conscription allowance of 500,000 humans per Earth year for labor and military service." Commander Davis leaned forward. "Ambassador Vreen, we appreciate your offer, but these terms are unacceptable. We wish to establish diplomatic relations as equals, not as subjects." The alien's multifaceted eyes blinked in what seemed like confusion. In 10,000 years of expansion, few species had rejected their initial terms. "Perhaps I have not made the alternative clear," Vreen said. "The hegemony's offer of protection is not optional. These terms are most generous for a species of your development level." Kelly Martinez spoke up. her voice firm despite her racing heart. "We understand you have a powerful fleet, Ambassador, but humans don't respond well to threats. We would prefer to negotiate terms that benefit both our peoples." After 3 hours of increasingly tense discussion, Ambassador Vreen returned to his shuttle. The humans had not only refused to sign the surrender documents, but had proposed their own terms for mutual cooperation and trade. Back on the flagship, Admiral Zexthal listened to Vreen's report with growing irritation. "They refused our terms. A species that barely has faster-than-light travel," he growled. "They seem unusually stubborn, Admiral," Vreen replied. "Their counteroffer was quite presumptuous. They speak as if they were equals." Zexthal moved to the tactical display, studying the small red dot that represented the humans' Mars colony. "Then we follow standard procedure for reluctant species. Send a battle group to their outpost on the red planet. Destroy it completely. Once they understand our power, they will accept our terms." Within hours, 5 Imperial destroyers approached Mars. The small defense fleet stationed there, just 6 ships, moved to intercept. The battle lasted less than 30 minutes. The human vessels fought with unexpected ferocity, even ramming an Imperial ship when their weapons failed. But the outcome was never in doubt. The Mars colony, home to 30,000 scientists, miners, and their families, was reduced to rubble under the Imperial bombardment. The destroyers then returned to the main fleet, their mission accomplished. On Earth, the images from Mars arrived with a 20-minute delay, just long enough for the Imperial ships to complete their attack and retreat. The UDC headquarters fell silent as the screens showed the destruction of humanity's first major off-world colony. Commander Davis stood motionless, watching the feeds from the few surviving cameras. Behind him, someone was sobbing quietly. "They just killed 30,000 civilians," Kelly whispered. As a demonstration, Davis turned to face the room full of military leaders. His voice was steady, but cold, with a rage that seemed to drop the temperature in the room. "Send the message to all nations. As of this moment, Earth is at war. Full mobilization. Every ship, every weapon, every resource we have goes toward one goal." He paused, looking at each face in the room. "They came expecting us to kneel. They'll learn why that was a mistake." On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zexthal prepared for the human surrender transmission. It would come soon, as it always did. The demonstration had never failed to bring a primitive species to heel, but no surrender came. Instead, Earth went silent. All broadcasts ceased. All communications ended. The blue-green planet simply waited. "They'll break soon enough," Zexthal told his officers. "Begin preparations for the ground invasion. 3 months should be sufficient to organize our forces." The Admiral had no way of knowing that those 3 months would be the biggest mistake in the hegemony's 10,000-year history. Humanity was not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight back in ways the Empire could never imagine. The Empire finally met humanity in battle. Now they understand the warnings. 3 months passed. The Imperial fleet orbited Jupiter, preparing for their final assault on Earth. Admiral Zexthal was pleased with the progress. 10,000 soldiers were ready for ground deployment. 50 warships waited for his command. Victory was certain. "Strange that the humans remained silent," said Subcommander Vex as he reviewed the daily reports. "No broadcasts, no messages, nothing since we showed them our power at Mars." Admiral Zexthal waved a dismissive hand. "Fear does that to primitive species. They hide and hope will go away." He studied the tactical display showing Earth's solar system. "We attack in one cycle. Begin moving supply ships forward." What the Admiral didn't know was that humans had spent those 3 months preparing in ways the Empire could never have predicted. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Captain Eric Wells floated in the control room of what used to be a mining vessel. Now it was something else entirely. Beside him, 20 men and women worked in silence, their eyes fixed on screens showing the Imperial supply convoy moving toward their position. "Remember," Eric said quietly, "we hit fast and we hit hard. Just like we practiced." The former mining ships had been stripped down, reinforced and armed with missiles originally designed to break apart asteroids. They weren't military vessels by any standard, but they had one advantage. The Empire didn't consider them a threat. "Lead ship passing checkpoint Alpha," said Jill Howard, Eric's second-in-command. Her hands moved steadily over the controls. Despite the fear everyone felt, Eric took a deep breath. "All ships execute Plan Hornet." 12 converted mining ships powered up and burst from their hiding places among the asteroids. The Imperial supply convoy, 5 large vessels with only 2 military escorts, had no time to react. The human ships swarmed around the convoy, their mining lasers and improvised missiles tearing into the Imperial vessels. Within minutes, 3 supply ships were crippled, leaking atmosphere and fuel into space. "Imperial escorts are turning to engage," Jill shouted. "All ships scatter. Rendezvous at Point Baker," Eric ordered. The human vessels broke formation and fled in different directions, weaving through the asteroid field with practiced precision. The Imperial escorts followed, but they were larger and less maneuverable. One of them clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. Back on the flagship, Admiral Zexthal received the news of the attack with disbelief. "Impossible," he growled. "Their ships were all accounted for." "They appear to be using modified civilian vessels, Admiral," reported the communications officer. 3 supply ships destroyed, another 2 damaged. This was not how primitives behaved. They were supposed to be cowering, preparing to surrender, not attacking Imperial convoys. "Increase escort patrols," the Admiral ordered, "and move up our timeline. We attack in 2 days. On Earth, Lieutenant Susan Carter sat in a darkened room filled with computers. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but a smile crossed her face as she typed the final command sequence. "Got it," she said to the room of engineers and computer specialists. "I'm in their communication network." General Peter Gould stepped closer to see her screen. "Can you disrupt their communications?" Susan's fingers flew over the keyboard. "Better than that. I can feed them false information. Their ships all receive automated navigation updates through this system." She looked up at the general. "We can send half their fleet in the wrong direction." The general placed a hand on her shoulder. "Do it." Across the solar system, a dozen other plans unfolded. In underground labs, scientists worked to understand the alien technology from recovered debris. In hidden shipyards, new weapons were mounted on Earth's limited fleet of space vessels. And far beyond the orbit of Pluto, something else was happening. Something the Empire would never expect. On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zexthal was growing concerned. More supply ships had been lost. Communication between vessels was becoming unreliable. Strange contradictory orders were being received by his captains. "Someone is interfering with our system," said his chief technology officer. "These humans understand our technology better than they should." "They're animals with spacecraft," Zexthal snapped. "Fix the communications issue and prepare for the attack." A junior officer approached with a datapad. "Admiral, we've received a message from the Outer Rim. It's from Fleet Commander Kraz-Thul." Zexthal frowned. Kraz-Thul commanded the Empire's forces in a distant sector. What would he want? The message was simple. "Retreat while you still can. They don't fight like anyone else." "What nonsense is this?" the Admiral demanded. "Kraz-Thul has never even encountered humans." "The message origin confirms it's from his command ship, sir," the officer said nervously. "Ignore it. Probably a communication error." The Admiral turned back to his battle plans, but a seed of doubt had been planted in his mind. The day of the attack arrived. The Imperial fleet moved toward Earth in perfect formation, ready to end this minor annoyance once and for all. That's when everything went wrong. As they approached Mars orbit, 20 Earth ships appeared from behind the red planet. They were military vessels, small but fast, and they moved in attack patterns the Empire had never seen before. "Evasive maneuvers," ordered Zexthal, as the first volley of Earth missiles streaked toward his fleet. The Imperial ships began to respond, but confusion spread through their ranks. Some captains received orders to advance, others to retreat. Navigation systems showed different positions for the same vessels. And then a new problem emerged. The Imperial ship's energy shields flickered and failed as they came under attack. Somehow the humans had found a frequency that disrupted the shields. Impossible, Zexthal whispered as he watched 5 of his ships explode in rapid succession. In a lab on Earth, Dr. Alan Green watched the battle through telescopes, a tired smile on his face. The shield disruptor works, he told the room of scientists. 3 months of reverse engineering their technology paid off. The space around Mars became a graveyard of Imperial vessels. What should have been an easy victory had turned into a disaster. The humans fought like nothing the Empire had ever seen. They used their smaller ships to draw Imperial fire, then struck from unexpected angles. They sacrificed vessels to protect others. They broke every rule of combat the Empire knew. Admiral, Zexthal ordered a retreat, pulling his remaining ships back toward Jupiter. 1/3 of his fleet was gone, destroyed by a species that shouldn't have stood a chance. How? He demanded of his officers. How did they do this? No one had an answer. But as the damaged Imperial fleet regrouped, a new message arrived from Fleet Commander Krazthul. I warned you. They learn faster than any species we've encountered, and they never fight the way you expect. Now Zexthal understood why Earth had gone silent after the Mars attack. They hadn't been cowering in fear. They had been planning, adapting, preparing, and what the Admiral didn't know yet was that this was just the beginning. While he retreated to Jupiter to repair his fleet, the next phase of humanity's plan was already in motion. Far beyond the solar system, small, fast human ships had slipped past Imperial patrols with a mission the Empire could never have anticipated. The war had just begun, and the warnings about humanity were proving true in ways that would soon shake the galactic hegemony to its core. The Empire finally met humanity in battle. Now they understand the warnings. 6 months had passed since first contact. Admiral Zexthal stood before a display showing the remains of his once mighty fleet. Only 30 ships remained operational. Out of the original 50, the humans had proven far more dangerous than anyone could have predicted. Admiral, the xenopsychology report you requested has arrived, said Sub-Commander Vex, offering a datapad. Zexthal took it with one of his 4 hands, his scales darkening with stress as he read. The Imperial scientists had been studying human behavior, trying to understand how this primitive species had managed to inflict such damage on the hegemony forces. This can't be right, he muttered. The report explained that humans had evolved as persistence predators. While most intelligent species in the galaxy evolved from herd animals or specialized hunters, humans had developed the ability to track prey for days, never giving up, until their exhausted targets simply collapsed. This evolutionary trait had shaped their psychology in ways the Empire had never encountered before. They don't have a surrender response, Zexthal said with growing horror. Most species have a point where they accept defeat to preserve the group. Humans just keep fighting. On Earth, the United Defense Coalition had transformed into a unified war machine. Old national rivalries had been set aside in the face of extinction. Every factory, laboratory, and shipyard worked toward one goal: survival. Lisa Summers led her Marine squad through the corridors of their training facility. At 28, she had already become something of a legend among Earth's defense forces after leading a boarding action against an Imperial scout ship and capturing it intact. The aliens think in straight lines, she told her soldiers as they prepared for their next mission. They expect us to retreat when outnumbered. They expect us to attack in force when we have an advantage. They expect us to follow rules. She smiled grimly. So we don't do any of that. Her unit specialized in boarding actions. With Earth still outnumbered in ship-to-ship combat, the strategy was to capture Imperial vessels rather than destroy them. It was dangerous work, but it was working. In an underground facility beneath what had once been a university campus, engineer Frank Rodriguez made final adjustments to Project Nemesis. 6 captured Imperial ships sat in the massive chamber, their hulls partially disassembled as human technicians worked to understand and adapt the alien technology. The shield modification is ready for testing, Frank told General Peter Gould, who had come to observe their progress. They watched as technicians activated the modified shield generator. It hummed to life, creating a protective bubble around one of Earth's own ships. "The power requirement is still high," Frank explained, "but we can protect our vessels now. And more importantly, we know exactly how to disable theirs." General Gould nodded with satisfaction. "How soon can we outfit the fleet?" 2 weeks for the first 10 ships. After that, maybe 5 ships per week as we refine the process. The general's face remained serious. "Good work. We've just received word that the Empire has called for reinforcements. Our deep space probes detected a large fleet heading toward our system. We need every advantage we can get." On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zexthal received a disturbing report from the outer reaches of the solar system. The small outpost they had established on a moon of Neptune had gone silent. "Probably a equipment failure," suggested one of his officers. The admiral wasn't convinced. "Send a scout ship to investigate." The scout ship never returned. Instead, 3 days later, they detected a small fleet of Earth vessels emerging from the direction of Neptune. They were using Imperial technology, modified and adapted to human designs. "How did they get past our outpost?" demanded Zexthal. "Theoyao's." Answer came shortly afterward as their long-range sensors detected activity near their outpost. It wasn't destroyed. It had been captured. The humans were using it as their own forward base. In the void of space near the asteroid belt, Commander Jason Palmer prepared his small fleet for what would become a turning point in the war. 10 Earth ships, newly equipped with the adapted shield technology, moved into position behind a cluster of large asteroids. "The Imperial supply fleet is approaching," reported his second-in-command Greg Fisher. 15 ships with heavy escort this time. They're learning. Jason nodded, but not fast enough. "All ships prepare to execute Maneuver Trojan." What the Empire didn't know was that the asteroid field had been modified. For months, mining teams had placed small thrusters on key asteroids, allowing them to be moved slightly. Not enough to be noticed, but enough to create a trap. As the Imperial fleet entered the asteroid field along their usual path, Jason gave the order. The thrusters activated, shifting dozens of massive rocks toward the Imperial ships. At the same time, the Earth vessels emerged from hiding, weapons firing. Caught between the closing asteroids and the human attack, the Imperial fleet broke formation. 3 supply ships and 2 warships were crushed by the moving asteroids. The others found themselves in a chaotic situation their training had never prepared them for. Jason's voice was calm as he directed the battle. "Concentrate fire on their flagship. Boarding teams stand by." The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 8 Imperial ships had been destroyed, 4 captured, and only 3 had escaped. It was the single largest defeat the Empire had suffered in over 100 years. Admiral Zexthal received the news with growing dread. The loss of another supply fleet meant his remaining ships would soon face fuel and ammunition shortages. But even more concerning were the reports that the humans had adapted Imperial shield technology to their own vessels. "They learn too quickly," he told his officers during an emergency meeting. "At this rate, they'll match our technology in less than a year." "The reinforcement fleet will arrive in 3 months, reminded Sub-Commander Vex. "We just need to hold our position until then." But the Admiral was no longer certain even reinforcements would be enough. He pulled up the mysterious message from Fleet Commander Krazathul again. "Retreat while you still can. They don't fight like anyone else." Now he understood what Krazathul meant. The humans didn't just fight differently, they thought differently. They adapted, improvised, and seemed to grow stronger from every defeat. The Empire's strength had always been its unchanging order and discipline. Against most enemies, this was an advantage. Against humans, it was becoming a fatal weakness. As if confirming his fears, a new report arrived. Human ships had been detected beyond the solar system, attacking Imperial outposts in neighboring systems. Somehow, they had stolen the technology for faster-than-light travel and were expanding the war. In a secure room deep beneath Earth's surface, the leaders of the United Defense Coalition looked at a star map showing the galactic hegemony's territory. Small red dots indicated the human strikes beyond their solar system. General Peter Gould addressed the assembled leaders. Phase 1 was defense. Phase 2 was counterattack. He pointed to the vast swath of Imperial territory on the map. Phase 3 begins now. We take the war to them. The Empire had awakened something it didn't understand. Humanity wasn't fighting just for survival anymore. They were fighting to ensure this never happened again. And the galaxy was about to change, forever. The Empire finally met humanity in battle. Now they understand the warnings. 1 Earth year had passed since the Imperial fleet first entered the solar system. What was meant to be a simple conquest had turned into the greatest crisis the galactic hegemony had faced in thousands of years. Admiral Zexthal looked much older now. His once bright scales had dulled, and his posture showed the weight of repeated defeats. He stood before the holographic projection of the Imperial Council, 7 ancient beings who ruled over thousands of worlds. The situation has become untenable, Zexthal reported. The humans have captured 23 of our vessels. They've adapted our technology and improved upon it in ways our scientists didn't think possible. They've launched attacks on 6 Imperial outposts beyond their solar system. He paused, gathering his courage. I formally request permission to negotiate peace terms. The council members exchanged glances. The oldest among them, High Counselor Drav, leaned forward. Denied, Admiral. The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. The reinforcement fleet will arrive in 3 weeks. You will hold your position until then. The transmission ended, leaving Zexthal alone with his thoughts. The council didn't understand. They hadn't seen what he had seen. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were transforming themselves into something the galaxy had never witnessed before. On Earth, in a massive underground hangar, Nicole Harrison walked around her creation with pride. At 35, she had been a brilliant but unknown engineer before the war. Now she led the team that had designed humanity's newest weapon, the Retribution-class destroyer, she explained to the military leaders who had come to witness the unveiling. It combines Imperial shield technology with our own weapon systems, but the real breakthrough is the drive system. The ship was smaller than Imperial vessels but sleeker, designed for speed and maneuverability rather than brute force. 10 of these ships were nearly complete, with more under construction in similar facilities around the world. General Daniel Ross studied the vessel with a critical eye. How does it compare to their ships? Nicole smiled. In computer simulations, 1 Retribution can take on 3 Imperial destroyers and win. They designed their technology for efficiency and consistency. We designed ours to be unpredictable and adaptable. The general nodded. When will they be ready for the battle at Saturn? 10 days, Nicole replied. Just in time to greet their reinforcements. The rings of Saturn had become the new front line. Earth's intelligence, gathered through captured Imperial communications and scout ships, had revealed that the reinforcement fleet would arrive near Saturn, where they would join with Zexthal's remaining forces before launching a final assault on Earth. Human forces had been preparing for this moment. The entire defense strategy now centered on preventing those fleets from joining. Commander Jason Palmer had been promoted after his victory in the asteroid belt. Now he stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, the Unity, reviewing battle plans with his officers. The Retribution destroyers will lead the attack, he explained, pointing to the tactical display. Our captured Imperial vessels will hang back until the enemy is committed. He looked around at the serious faces watching him. Make no mistake, this will be the largest space battle in human history. But we have one advantage they don't. What's that, sir? Asked one of his junior officers. Jason's face was grim but determined. Everything to lose. In his private quarters aboard the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zexthal made a decision. Against direct orders, he opened a secure channel to Earth's Defense Command. When General Daniel Ross appeared on the screen, both leaders studied each other in silence for a moment. General Ross, the Admiral finally spoke. I wish to discuss the possibility of ending this conflict before more lives are lost on both sides. The general's expression remained neutral. The last time we attempted diplomacy, you destroyed our Mars colony and killed 30,000 civilians. Why should we trust you now? Because I have seen enough to know this war cannot be won, Zexthal replied honestly. Not by us. Not as we are. Before they could continue, alarms blared throughout the Imperial ship. The Admiral cut the transmission and rushed to the command deck. The reinforcement fleet has arrived early, reported Subcommander Vex. They're taking heavy fire from human forces near Saturn's rings. The massive view screen showed the battle unfolding. The Imperial reinforcement, fleet, 60 ships strong, had emerged from faster-than-light travel directly into an ambush. New human vessels, unlike any they had seen before, darted between the larger Imperial ships, their weapons cutting through shields that should have been impenetrable. How did they know exactly where our fleet would emerge? Zexthal wondered, aloud. The answer came moments later as several ships in the reinforcement fleet suddenly turned their weapons on their companions. They weren't Imperial vessels at all. They were captured ships piloted by humans who had infiltrated the gathering point for the reinforcements. All ships move to assist, ordered Zexthal. But even as he gave the command, he knew they would be too late. The Battle of Saturn's rings lasted just under 5 hours. When it ended, the reinforcement fleet had been decimated. Of 60 ships, only 23 remained operational, and those were retreating in disarray. The human losses were significant as well, but they had achieved their objective, preventing the two Imperial fleets from combining their strength. Admiral Zexthal watched the reports come in with a growing sense that he was witnessing the end of an era. For 10,000 years, the hegemony had expanded unchallenged. Now, in just 1 year, a single species on a single planet had brought that expansion to a halt. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. Admiral, we're receiving strange reports from Imperial outposts in neighboring sectors. What kind of reports? Uprisings, sir. On at least 12 worlds. Subject species are revolting against Imperial control and... The officer hesitated. They're using human tactics. This was worse than Zexthal had feared. Somehow, the humans had made contact with other species under Imperial rule. They weren't just defending their world anymore. They were spreading their ideas of resistance throughout the Empire. A final message arrived from Fleet Commander Krazathul. It's too late. The humans don't just want to win. They want to change everything. Now Zexthal understood the true danger. The hegemony had ruled through fear and the belief that resistance was futile. The humans had shattered that belief not just for themselves, but potentially for every subjugated species in the galaxy. On Earth, General Ross met with the United Defense Coalition leadership to report on the victory at Saturn. The Battle of Saturn's rings has given us a window, he explained. Their reinforcements are scattered. Admiral Zexthal's fleet is isolated, and our operatives report growing unrest throughout Imperial territory. President Laura Bennett, who had led Earth's political response to the invasion, asked the question everyone was thinking. What's our next move? General Ross pointed to a star map showing the heart of the hegemony. We've learned the location of their capital world. It's time to take this fight to the Imperial Council itself. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the audacity of this plan. 1 year ago, humanity had been confined to their own solar system, facing extinction. Now they were planning to strike at the heart of a 10,000-year-old empire. The next phase of the war was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Empire finally met humanity in battle. Now they understand the warnings. 18 months after first contact, Admiral Zexthal stood before the Imperial Council on their capital world, Zentrix Prime. The Grand Chamber, with its towering columns and ancient symbols of power, had hosted countless victory celebrations over 10,000 years. Today, it witnessed something entirely different. You have failed the Empire, Admiral, said High Counselor Drav, his voice echoing through the chamber. The human problem should have been resolved within days. Zexthal had once feared these ancient beings. Now he simply felt pity for their blindness. The humans were never a problem to be solved, he replied. They are unlike any species we have encountered in our history." His words were interrupted by a junior officer who rushed into the chamber, breaking all protocols of imperial decorum. "Forgive me, counselors, but we've detected a large fleet entering the system. They've bypassed all our outer defenses, displays, around the chamber activated, showing dozens of ships approaching Zentrix Prime. Some were clearly of human design, others were modified imperial vessels. Most shocking of all were ships belonging to various subject species of the Empire." "Impossible," whispered one of the counselors. "How could they reach our capital so quickly? How could they know its location?" An archivist hurried forward with an ancient data crystal. "Counselors, I found something in the oldest archives, something about the humans." The crystal was inserted into a reader and ancient text scrolled across the main display. The records dated back to the early days of the Empire, nearly 10,000 years ago. "The species on the third planet of the yellow star must not be approached," read High Counselor Drav, his voice growing weaker with each word. "Their world is to be marked as quarantined. They are chaos bringers who would choose death over subjugation. The Empire must never awaken the humans." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans were not unknown to the Empire. They had been deliberately avoided, their existence buried in ancient warnings that had been forgotten, over millennia of bureaucracy and expansion. "We awakened them," Zexthal said quietly, "and now they have awakened others." On the bridge of the Earth flagship Unity, Admiral Olivia Bennett watched the Imperial capital grow larger on the main screen. At 45, she had spent most of her career in administrative roles before the war. Now she commanded the largest fleet humans had ever assembled. "All ships report ready," said her second-in-command, Captain Paul Wright. "Our allies are in position as well." The allies were something no one on Earth could have imagined 18 months ago. Representatives from 12 different alien species served aboard human ships. All had been subjects of the Empire. All had joined the fight for freedom after making contact with human operatives. "Open a channel to the Imperial capital," ordered Admiral Bennett. Her face appeared on screens throughout Zentrix Prime, including in the council chamber. "I am Admiral Olivia Bennett of Earth. We do not come solely as conquerors, but as liberators. The Empire's time of absolute rule is over." In orbit around the capital, the battle began. The Imperial home fleet was vast, but many of its crews had never seen actual combat. They had been stationed at the heart of the Empire, far from any real threat. They faced human ships whose crews were veterans of a year of constant warfare, who had adapted and evolved with each battle, and the humans weren't fighting alone. Ships from species long oppressed by the Empire joined the attack, their crews fighting with the desperation of those who had glimpsed freedom for the first time. While the space battle raged, dropships descended to the surface of Zentrix Prime. Marine squads led by Lisa Summer secured key facilities. They met resistance, but it was disorganized and ineffective. The Empire had never expected an enemy to reach their capital. In the council chamber, Admiral Zexthal watched impassively as human soldiers entered. Their weapons were raised but disciplined, not firing unless fired upon. "The Council is under the protection of the galactic hegemony," declared High Counselor Drav. "Any action against us is punishable by death." A human woman stepped forward. Dr. Karen Price had been an anthropologist before the war. Now she served as Earth's chief diplomat to the alien species who had joined their cause. "The hegemony no longer dictates punishment or protection," she said. "We're here to negotiate the terms of your surrender and the formation of a new galactic community." High Counselor Drav looked bewildered. "You cannot simply end 10,000 years of order. The galaxy needs the Empire's guidance." Karen smiled. "What the galaxy needs is freedom to choose its own path. The species you've controlled for millennia will now have that choice." Within hours, the battle was over. The Imperial home fleet surrendered when news spread that the Council had been captured. Across the galaxy, Imperial governors and administrators found themselves facing uprisings they couldn't contain. 1 month later, representatives from 100 worlds gathered in the former council chamber. The room had been redesigned, replacing the raised platform where the councilors had sat with a circular arrangement where all delegates sat as equals. President Ryan Clark of Earth addressed the gathering. Today marks the founding of the Galactic Cooperative, not an empire built on domination, but a community built on mutual respect and cooperation. Admiral Zexthal, now representing the former Imperial core worlds, nodded in reluctant acknowledgement. He had come to understand what the ancient warnings had meant. Humans didn't just fight differently, they dreamed differently. Where the Empire saw only order through control, humans imagined freedom through cooperation. The remaining Imperial loyalists had retreated to a handful of core worlds, their power and influence broken forever. The 10,000-year reign of the galactic hegemony had ended in less than 2 Earth years. On Mars, the colony destroyed at the beginning of the war had been rebuilt. New domes gleamed in the red sunlight, and streets bustled with activity. At the center of the main plaza stood a simple memorial. People from Earth and a dozen alien worlds gathered around it during the dedication ceremony. Admiral Olivia Bennett unveiled the monument. It was a piece of twisted metal from the original colony mounted on a stone base. A simple inscription read, "They came expecting surrender. They learned why humanity was feared. They understood the warnings too late." As the ceremony ended, a small group toured the new research facility nearby. Dr. Karen Price explained the significance to representatives from former subject worlds of the Empire. "This is why we fought," she said, gesturing to scientists of various species working side by side. "Not just to survive, but to create something better together." One of the alien delegates, a tall being with iridescent skin, asked the question. Many still wondered, what makes humans different? Why were you able to defeat an empire that ruled for 10,000 years? Karen considered the question carefully. Perhaps it's because throughout our history, we've always imagined better worlds than the ones we lived in. The Empire built a galaxy based on what was. Humanity dreams of what could be. As they looked out over the Martian landscape, ships from a dozen worlds passed overhead, carrying the seeds of a new galactic civilization. The Empire had finally met humanity in battle, and in doing so had fulfilled the ancient warnings and changed the course of galactic history forever.